Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
From the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Thank you, everybody, for being here with me tonight. Tonight, we are going to go straight into the evidence, and then I will address questions at the end. So please hold your questions to the end. Tonight, on the anniversary of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, I have updated the list of all evidence in the case of my investigation for the last 1.5 years in collaboration with MH370X, the organization that I started to research the MH370 videos. The only thing I want to say before we begin, so this is 100% clear, is I am not scamming anyone or promoting this idea because it's popular or for it to make money for me. I 100% believe the videos are real. Anyone claiming anything to the contrary should be considered a bad faith actor. The weight of evidence that the videos are authentic is overwhelming beyond really any reasonable doubt. So the plan here is to go through that evidence right now with you guys and hopefully convince some more people. So in the description of wherever you're watching or listening to this, you can find a link to this document right here. There we go. And this document is the updated evidence link, and we start straight away with the videos. If you're watching this in video format, you can watch the videos right now on the screen. There are 2 leaked military videos that first appeared on a tiny YouTube channel in 2014 and only gained popularity in August of 2023 on the subreddit UFOs. That's where I found the videos. That's where this all began. The first video, archived satellite video, called Satellite Video Airliner and UFOs. There's an archive link. It's from a YouTube channel called Regicide Anon. In the description, it says, received March 12, 2014, uploaded May 19th, 2014. At least that was the published date. And then it says source protected. In the metadata of this video, even though it doesn't say MH370 anywhere in the description, in the metadata, it actually does say both Flight 370 and Malaysia Airlines. So we know 100% this video is connected to MH370 just based on the timeline alone. Now, the second video that came out after this is a drone video. And this one says UAV captures airliner and UFOs. This is also the oldest version, is also from Regicide Anon, but this video was uploaded a few weeks later. In the description, it says received June 5th, 2014, uploaded or published June 12th, 2014. So there's a lag between they received it and when they uploaded it, according to the story of the videos. Video shows airliner being followed by 3 unidentified spherical objects for a short time. Then airliner and orbs vanish. This appears to be alt angle to previously submitted sat footage. And then there was a link there to the sat footage, which now does not exist on the internet anymore. So it's important to point out here as well that Regicide Anon made a Twitter account 3 days after the video was published, the first video. First video was published May 19th. May 22nd, Regicide Anon makes a Twitter account. We found the Twitter account and their posts. And on May 22nd, they say, please spread this video before it's pulled with presumably a link to the video. And they tag a bunch of people, and they tag MH370 in there as well. And then you can see June 13th, one day after they published it, or possibly the same day based on time zones, alt angle of the airliner abduction just received with a link. So if somebody was faking this, it's pretty odd. Like, was Regicide Anon involved on this? If Regicide Anon is not involved in these videos being produced as fakes, then it's hard to understand how they could be fake at all, given the story of Regicide Anon being the first person to have them on the internet, as far as we can tell. And the story Regicide Anon is telling here is pretty clear. Source protected. Please spread this before it's pulled. And just to be clear, there's also alternate sources, but they all post-date Regicide Anon. But important to point out, the Vimeo link, if you translate it into English, says that Regicide Anon was arguing for the validity of the videos with the other people. So it seems like everything goes back to Regicide Anon. Now, details about these videos. Why are these videos so important? Well, right away, the evidence is absolutely overwhelming. In the bottom left corner, we can see it says NROL 22. This was the first launch of the space-based infrared system known as SBIRS. You've probably heard about it, talked about it on Joe Rogan, in 2006. And we can clearly see coordinates after the satellite designation. Now, spoiler alert, we've determined that this is a relay satellite because of its Molniya orbit. And that's exactly what we need, because that first video we saw is not simply a satellite video. It's something that we're going to find out is called whammy footage that takes fused data from multiple sensors through relay satellites and beams it to ground-based computers so it can produce basically a Google video playback of the entire planet, like this ultimate DVR of the entire world. Now, there's a link in here to SBIRS video in this document where you can actually watch how these satellites are scanning the whole planet, and then imagine how they would take that sensor data and send it to ground-based computers to produce essentially the video that you're seeing here of MH370. The coordinates. The coordinates are the absolute smoking gun. Absolute, undeniable smoking gun. The coordinates indicate the Nicobar Islands, a straight shot from the last military radar points. Straight shot. You can see from the image here where I superimposed the satellite coordinates over this image from a blog that had the actual picture from the Lido Hotel of Malaysian military radar plotted over a Google Earth map. You can see how close it is. There's no chance of this being a coincidence. The fact that they have it here in a straight line means that what happened is the plane kept going. It kept going straight. And then what we see happen in those videos is what happened into the plane. The coordinates are not tracking the plane because they don't change as the plane moves. They only change when the person moves the screen. The whammy footage, that's how the system works. They can just move it around. But when they move it around, it changes the coordinates. So the actual coordinates of the plane, the coordinates in the video are not the plane. It's just somewhere nearby. It could be a huge area. From what we looked up, it could be anywhere. It could be even 100 kilometers or more. Also, very important to point out that the satellite video is a screen recording of a window. Again, absolute smoking gun, undeniable proof. We can see the cursor come on the screen from off the screen. If you're on a computer, you've ever used a computer before, you would know this indicates that somebody has a window open. No question, undeniable. The cursor goes off the screen on multiple sides. This is a window on a much larger screen. They're recording the actual window. When they move the perspective around, they're moving the perspective around in the window. The screen recording is recording the window. You can tell. You can watch them move it around. They're using like a middle mouse to hold down click and then move around the perspective. But they're still within the window with the cursor. This is impossible to fake. Far, far too detailed. There's more details to come here as well, but I just wanted to point that out again. The satellite video is 6 frames per second. This is consistent with all the capabilities of whammy technology, which when I've researched it recently, it's anywhere between 2 and 10 frames per second. So the satellite video being 6 frames per second is exactly within that capability for military spy capabilities. 6 frames per second that you're seeing if you're watching this on your screen right now. And then here, you can see as well that we found online researching it, that's exactly consistent with what we're seeing here. High scene coverage, high resolution, low frame rate. An example of whammy sensor, which is probably not as good as the military ones, are 2 hertz, 150 megapixels, scene coverage, at least 10 kilometers squared. My guess is it's much bigger than that. Whammy fuses data from multiple sources and relays it. Now, I also want to point out that the clouds in that video move and evolve. Hold on, I'm getting confused. And there's actually a moment where the smoke is displacing the orbs. So if you click on the link, I've actually uploaded a clip of it. And you can see here that you can see, or the orb is displaced by the smoke here. You can see the accurate fluid dynamics, slowed it down and played it over multiple times. It's easier to see in the color or changed version, but if you look at the original, you will be able to see it in the original as well. We've checked this. There may be other times where it happens. This is the most noticeable time. This detail would require a level of visual effects that is hard to imagine would be being used. Okay. Now, the zap accurately illuminates the clouds in 3 dimensions. This is another detail that is undeniable. You can even see the light reflect off the nearby cloud. You can see it reflecting off the cloud naturally. Anyone who's done visual effects would know that how difficult this would be to pull off, and to pull it off perfectly the way that we see it in 2 videos from 2 different angles just adds a level of depth that shows that this cannot be a picture that we're looking at. This is not 2-dimensional what we're looking at. What we're looking at has depth. That means it's 3-dimensional. This rules out so many visual effects arguments, including most of the debunk attempts that have been attempted on these videos, do not consider the fact that this must be a 3-dimensional environment, factually speaking. Must be. Satellite USA 229 was at the right location at the right time with a sister satellite right overhead. And there's a link here. You can actually watch the recreated flight path. We searched through it and searched where satellites were and found that there's one right at the right time to be beaming data to be able to produce what we've got going on in the video. The drone is a General Atomics MQ variant. It's either MQ-9, MQ-1C, MQ-20 Avenger actually came up, which I believe is controlled by the Navy. Very difficult to tell. They all look almost identical. The thermal drone camera has similar capabilities to a Westcam MX20. There's a link here as well if you want to watch and see. You can tell it's got the same high resolution, smooth motion capabilities. When you're watching the drone video, there's actually accurate camera shake as the camera operator zooms in. You can see it in the beginning of the video. And input delay, real input delay from the camera operator as well. So just a couple more details to point out. You can see that the thermal is a literal perfect overlay onto just actually MH370. It's a real picture of the missing plane. So pretty much a perfect match, as they say. Both videos are nighttime. Proven by the fact that there are no shadows anywhere or directional lighting anywhere on any of the clouds. Extremely important to point that out. There are no shadows anywhere in the video, and there's no directional lighting anywhere on any of the clouds. It's nighttime in the videos. A lot of people try to claim that it's daytime, and I want to say that our capabilities allow nighttime to look like daytime, especially in a computer-generated DVR playback. The proximity of the drone and the multiple sensors recording the plane indicates that this was a military operation. Everybody keeps asking, why was it recording? The answer to that is so simple. Because it's an operation. It's the only reason why they were re-recording in those videos. The only one. It's an operation. Let that sink in, because I found the leaker of the videos. I found the leaker of the videos. Let me just let that sink in, everybody who's listening right now. I found the leaker of the videos just through hard-ass work myself in 2023, October of 2023. That date is important. Remember that. In October of 2023, I went public saying I found the leaker. It has to be this guy. He checks all the boxes. He was on one of the AWACS that night during the operation. Has to be. He must have had an emotional reaction to see that and leak those videos like quickly to Regicide Anon. It's not like he leaked them like a years later. He leaked it 4 days after, according to Regicide Anon. He cropped the HUD data in the drone, and he cropped the satellite video, the way he was tracking the plane, so that we couldn't see the drone or potentially other assets that were in the area. There's probably more. He might have thought he was looking at UFOs or aliens, like a lot of people do when they're looking at that, only to be later revealed to him that it was actually our technology. This is just hypothetical, but it matches the psychological profile of what might have happened for this to leak. Now, he was assigned the VPU-2 Wizard Special Projects Squadron in February of 2014. They do black operations. Okay, so we've already nailed the guy, like right place, right time, right squadron. Right? That should be enough already, but there's more. He was an aviator, lieutenant commander on the P-8 Poseidon and Lockheed Martin EP-3E Ares II spy planes. These planes fuse collected intelligence for battlefield situational awareness. His role was to relay that battlefield situational awareness, aka video and stuff, to upper command. Lynn's lawyer was quoted saying the investigation into him began April 2nd, 2014. That's a month after the plane disappeared. That's 2 to 3 weeks after Regicide Anon claimed to have received videos. In May of 2014, Lynn accidentally left 2 flight manifests in his flight suit from a deployment that included search and rescue code names. So 2 months after MH370 disappears, he gets caught with flight manifests he's not supposed to have that have search and rescue code names on them. What other, it could only be, MH17 hadn't even happened yet at that point. That can only be MH370. Defense argued the classified information in question was available on the internet. I couldn't even believe I read this in an open news article. The defense argued the classified information in question was available on the internet. And he was a Navy liaison to U.S. Congress, meaning he was privy to the Navy's black program portfolio. All the black projects they had to get approved for Congress quietly, that was his job. So he was almost certainly exposed to this technology. What he leaked was so big, it triggered a national security alert at the highest levels. Okay, so the reason why they were trying to come down on him as a spy, because he triggered this major alert. So they were trying to say that he was a spy. But the problem was they had to admit there was no evidence that he ever exchanged any information with anyone from China. So what does that mean? If we add that up, that means he leaked something on the internet, right? If you didn't leak anything to our adversary, who'd you leak it to? Oh, the public. It had to have been leaked to the... In fact, the defense admitted it. The defense admitted they leaked it to the public right here. He got abused. They forced him into pretrial detainment under questionable circumstances, and he got abused by the goon squad. Held in pretrial detainment for over 300 days. Why? Because the military was afraid that he was going to commit gray mail, where the defendant says, I'm just going to blurt out national security information to CNN or during the trial, or you just charge me for less. Scary stuff. He must have had something real serious that he didn't want people to know about, like, I leaked the MH370 videos. The United States government took the plane with some orbs. The judge said he had a dangerous pattern of disclosure of classified information, but didn't point to any disclosures of classified information to support that argument. It's weird. Almost like there was only one big thing, and they couldn't really show that. Took a plea deal, got a 9-year sentence after the plea deal, after they threw away the espionage charges. After that, still got 9 years. With 3 years suspended because he worked with the NCIS and the FBI, probably to clean up the leak of the MH370 videos and make sure that it never went public. That would be my guess for why he got 3 years shaved off. He appealed in his 2019 appeal, stating that his sentence was too harsh, and the judge specifically argued that what he did was extremely serious. I've never seen a case like this ever that you could even compare it to. I dare anyone out there to find one that is as odd as this. It can only point to something like the MH370 videos. When I FOIA'd the NCIS, they rejected my FOIA in total to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. In total. They wouldn't give me anything about it. But someone got in touch with Lynn's lawyer, Larry Youngner, and they proved it by posting a voicemail from Youngner to them, trying to get back in touch with them for having missed their phone call. And the same day they posted the voicemail, they posted that they had the conversation with Youngner and asked about satellite video, kind of covertly. And that Larry Youngner said that the feds brought satellite video into the case. If that statement can be corroborated, game over, he's the guy. Why? Because no one on this planet even knew we had satellite video unless you were already in black operations or you have been following me. I'm the guy that's been promoting that we have the satellite video capability through the research that MH370X has done. There is nobody else that's been saying that. We even predate the claims that were made in the November UFO hearing. where it was finally admitted by Tim Gallaudet and Michael Schellenberger that the government has satellite video of UFOs, which would imply that we have satellite video capabilities. It's the first time it's ever publicly been stated, and we already proved it before that. So the fact that there's satellite video being brought into Edward Lynn's case proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that he must be the guy. But there's one more thing that's not on here. I revealed his name in October of 2023, publicly started saying his name on all the podcasts, that he was the guy that leaked the videos, in hopes that he would reach out to me and talk to me and do the right thing and say that he was the guy that leaked it and come forward and be a whistleblower. And in response, not only did he not reach out to me, and I know he got the message because I reached out to the law firm that represented him in October, he legally changed his name December 29th, 2023. 2.5 months after I started publicly saying his name on podcasts, instead of reaching out to me, he filed for a name change request from Edward C. Lynn to Edward James Soraya. And it's interesting because when I reached out to his company and left a message that I'm sure got to him, that he was my hero, is what I wanted them to say, they all knew him as Edward Lynn, meaning he was not ashamed of being Edward Lynn. Everybody knows him as Edward Lynn, as Eddie Lynn. So why would he put a name change request in after he'd already got out of prison? He'd been working, had already started his own company. Everything's going fine. There's no reason to change your name. And then all of a sudden, the guy says, you leaked these crazy videos, and is saying Edward C. Lynn leaked MH370 videos. And now, all of a sudden, changes his name. Lawyer won't respond, phone calls or voicemail messages. All I'm asking for is confirmation of the statement he's already made to somebody else. Edward Lynn won't respond. Family members won't respond. This is the behavior of guilty people, beyond any shadow of a doubt. Beyond any shadow of a doubt. This is not a joke. This is not a game. What I'm telling you right now is 100% real. How to proceed, I don't know. We're in uncharted territories. I'm doing my best here as just a normal, random guy that came across this information and has clearly uncovered something just absolutely huge. Huge. So now, the story of MH370. So this is a combination of what I think happened to the plane and then some of the arguments for some of the other claims around the plane. So there are two links here to the flight path video and flight path explainer video. If you want to see both the flight path and understand it visually, and then my short explainer video is a little bit outdated, but still pretty accurate in terms of what I think happened. So first, most important part is the plane didn't crash in the South Indian Ocean. No debris field found. Plane would have exploded into thousands of pieces, whether or not it had fuel in there or not, hidden in the ocean from the sky. It's a massive, massive plane, a Boeing 777. We did the most expensive search in history and didn't find anything above or below water. Let me make that clear. The search didn't find anything. Nothing ever in 11 years. No black boxes were found, despite that they can produce signal at below signal depths of 20,000 feet. There was no problem that it wasn't below the signal depths of the black boxes. They found nothing ever. None of the 4 redundant emergency transponder beacons activated. They only activate on crash. None of them activated. The argument people make is, oh, well, it was like the pilot must have just decided to like somehow perfectly land the plane on the ocean without triggering the ELTs. It's just a continual, like, more and more excuses that have to be made for this like tortured logic to try to continue to believe that somehow this plane went down in the South Indian Ocean. SOSA system, the sound surveillance system by the Navy, would have heard it, just like they heard the Titan sub pop, where the Navy said nothing for 5 days when the sub popped off next to the Titanic. So that system, 1,000%, SOSA system would have heard Malaysian Airlines crashing into the ocean. Doesn't matter where, literally anywhere on the planet, they would have heard it. It's a system they've had since like the 50s. There's a Cardiff University scientific paper that found no strong candidate signal acoustic detections. They even compared other historical situations, did the math for the mass of the plane under different speeds going into the ocean. And under all of those circumstances, both hydroacoustic systems within range should have heard the plane hitting the ocean. Neither of them did. The only acoustic detection when they tried to torture themselves into was over almost an hour after the plane would have ran out of fuel, which, guys, planes don't fly without fuel. So can't possibly be that one either right off the bat. So no acoustic detection. So we have absolute scientific proof that the plane didn't crash in the South Indian Ocean. There's scientific proof. It's just a matter of people don't want to accept it. That's the reality of the situation. Even after just no results after 11 years, scientific proof that they're wrong doesn't matter. Just people refuse to admit that they couldn't possibly, that they've been lied to. I also want to point out that in the location where the plane supposedly was lost from radar, there's still 5 radars in range. This isn't a joke either. This is from the Royal Aeronautical Society 2019 report you can find on YouTube. 5 radars in range still. What? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. So we're just going to pretend like the plane was lost from radar when there's no way it possibly could have been lost from radar where they're claiming? It doesn't that feel like a very, very, very important fact? It's undeniable fact. Look at all the radars in range there. The excuse is India and Thailand just haven't said anything, and we're just going to ignore that they haven't said anything. And Indonesia just says they were just off that night. Sorry, they were just off. I'm not kidding. That's the literal excuse. What? Okay. So there's multiple radars as well that would have seen the plane, like JORN, this Jindali Operational Radar Network in Australia, Diego Garcia, Coco Islands, Pine Gap. I mean, these have radar systems that are going to see planes for like thousands of miles. They're called over the horizon. There was also no witnesses that saw the plane, even though they claimed the plane crashed in the morning hours on an active shipping route in the South Indian Ocean. So there's no witnesses either. And now there's one more fact I want to point out as well. A lot of people say, well, the ocean's really big. Realize like it's not a situation where they don't think they know where it is. They think they know exactly where the plane is, and it's just not there. This isn't a situation where the plane could be anywhere. It's not. They're like, oh, we have these satellite pings. If you believe these satellite pings are real, then we know almost exactly where the plane is. We just have to search this arc. And they've been searching that arc for 11 years and found nothing. So there's nowhere else for the plane to go. The arc is where the plane runs out of fuel. That's it. Game over. Nowhere else for it to be. Let that sink in. I want to say it one more time. It's super important. There's nowhere else for the plane to be. For when people say the ocean is really big, you say they've searched everywhere the plane could possibly be. There is nowhere else for it to be. The only conclusion that can be made is that the plane never went in the South Indian Ocean, and the evidence that led us to that conclusion must be phony. Only conclusion that can be made. I don't want to make a conclusion like that, but we must make it because the evidence of it is overwhelming. I also want to point out that 19 families of the victims signed a statement saying that they could call the victims' phones for up to 4 days after the plane disappeared, which is not contrary to the one guy that they got to go on every major station and make up the lie that that happens. They literally just got the same exact guy to go on every single mainstream media news. If you don't believe me, go check. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. Jeff Kagan is his name. Every single one had the same guy come on and say, yeah, phones still ring all the time when there's no power or when they're on the bottom of the ocean or whatever. I couldn't believe they had the same guy. And they have the link that I posted in this clip is an actual video of the guy calling for like a second or two. You can actually see a video of the guy calling. Crazy, man. Okay, so the plane didn't crash in the South Indian Ocean. We have to conclude that, regardless of what we want to believe about MH370, we have to conclude the plane didn't crash in the South Indian Ocean. There's just no evidence that it did. None at all. And then people will say, well, but what about the debris? Didn't somebody find some debris? Not the official search. Random people in 2015, about a year after the plane disappeared, started finding debris and saying, wait, is this from MH370? And where were they? Were they in Australia where all the drift models showed that the debris should have washed ashore in Western Australia? No. They were in Africa. Africa? So people start searching around. Africa? Sure enough, more people start finding debris from MH370 in Africa, but not like close to Australia, like in like Tanzania, South Africa. Way, way too far away from where they were searching. But it makes sense because what did I just say in the previous statement? The plane didn't crash in the South Indian Ocean. So now that we're seeing debris wash ashore in Africa, we should be asking the question, wait, where did the plane actually go? Huh. So when you look at the debris that they claim to have found as well, the amount of debris that was found does not even prove the plane crashed. This main cabin interior panel that everybody's probably looking at right here is not what CNN is making it look to be. No piece that was that big. The largest piece was the flap, which you can see in the middle of your screen. That was the largest piece found, the flap. And look at how tiny it is compared to the size of the wing. You can fly a plane without a flap and land a plane without a flap. There was not even enough evidence, enough debris found to even remotely claim that that proves the plane crashed. You can just see it with your eyes. Only 3 confirmed pieces. And the confirmed pieces did not use unique serial numbers. This is important to point out for the conspiracy theorists. This is a factual statement. The confirmed pieces did not use unique serial numbers. The unique serial plate was missing from the flap. Mysteriously missing. They used part numbers, which I would argue, most people argue, easily could be forged, changed, messed around with. However, I do believe this debris is from MH370. I do believe that. I just believe that this South Indian Ocean narrative cannot possibly be correct. There's just no evidence for it. So MH370 ended up, whatever ended up means, somewhere closer to Africa. Not in the South Indian Ocean, somewhere closer to Africa. Now, there's some really amazing charts here that show the ocean currents, which cannot be changed, not yet at least. And you can see that there's no way that the debris can be from the location where they've been searching. The ocean currents flow to the east. And you can also see how absurd it is to think that our last location of the plane is somewhere in the Malacca Straits, but that somewhere, for some reason, we're searching about as far away as possible from that location in the middle of nowhere. Like, you couldn't come up with a better story for, like, just go search in the middle of nowhere. It's down the block over there. Just keep searching. You just search in the middle of nowhere. Instead of the smart places, which would be like, does the perpetrator have any hideouts nearby, right? Like, does the perpetrator who could have pulled this off have any hideouts? Or what we would call military bases. That was just vernacular. Oh, look at this dot here I put called Diego Garcia. Look at the location of the debris relative to the ocean currents, relative to the island of Diego, or of the Maldives, and the U.S. military base of Diego Garcia. Look at that location. That looks like I'm not an oceanographer or whatever the shit you have to be, but it looks like a pretty solid match to where I would imagine debris to drift from Diego Garcia to Africa in a year. Now, there's another, this model is my favorite model that I've ever seen in actual life ever, because there's a model out there you can find if you guys just Google like MH370. It's the most common one you find. that's got like blue, green, pink, and red, and it looks like spaghetti strings. This was done before they found any debris. And these are the best ones because the only models you can believe are ones that have no bias in them. And with this model, they found right away that all the debris would have washed ashore in Western Australia, like all of it. Like even in 2 years, it wouldn't have made it to the Reunion Islands, not even in 2 years. And they found the debris just a little bit after 1 year. So a little bit after 1 year, this debris is like still near Australia. So they found, and then they tried to like retcon this after the fact, which is just hilarious, is what they do, right? When they try to lie, they say no, it's like that. People will just literally, with no substantiation whatsoever, just claim, no, it's consistent with my models. No, it's not. I can see the model right there. It says right there, no chance within the time period we found could that debris have washed ashore in the Reunion Islands, and that's the closest location any debris was found. Not possible. You can see it right there. All the debris, the vast majority of it, 95, 99% of it, should have been washing ashore in Western Australia. Crazy, right? Okay. It's also physically impossible for the debris to have drifted, just based on the maps I was showing you before, from the location to like South Africa. Just physically not possible, no matter what you think, no matter which direction you think the ocean currents go. Couldn't make it. Too far away. The barnacles on the flap only showed 4 months of growth, but it had to have been in the water for over a year. And then there was growth on the area they claimed was exposed to the air. This is how they were arguing that the flap was able to somehow defy the laws of physics. They claimed that, oh no, it was exposed, so it was like blowing like a sail. But there was barnacles along the edge that was supposedly out of the water. So that doesn't work. That means that it had to be underwater. That means you can't use that excuse. Their answer to that? No answer. They don't say anything. This is another huge piece to point out. There's actually 2 pieces that have clear 100% undeniable burn marks on them with the honeycomb pattern of a Boeing aircraft, meaning there's not really any other people that have pieces that look like this. And it was found in the same time period on, in the ocean, and you can just see the burn marks on it. You can even see the heat damage on the circled part in the top right. You explain that burn damage without some type of fire, right? Hard to imagine, especially if you're trying to claim that it was like they flew the plane for 8 hours and then just smoothly landed into the water. Well, why am I seeing burn damage on this piece of the debris that you're telling me is from the plane? And there's another piece as well that I don't have a link to on here, but you can find all the debris. There's more. This one was just a little bit more clear that, anybody can just tell what fire damage looks like. There was also a Boeing 777 fire suppression bottle that washed up in the Maldives just 2 weeks, March 25th, after the plane disappeared. Some people have tried to claim this is from some other thing. It's a perfect match to a Boeing 777 fire suppression device. No doubt whatsoever. It can only have washed ashore if it's empty. And it even has a serial number that you can even see on there. Or at least a partial serial number. This was just ignored and said that it's not connected without ever even being looked into. Nobody ever even looked into it. Which to me would imply a cover-up. Because why would you not look into a piece of evidence? Because you've already decided that you don't want to look into it. You can't look into it. Now, I also point out that I FOIA requested this fire suppression bottle to the NSA and the CIA. And by one of them, I got rejected. Or I got by both of them, but I got one of them. I got rejected in a way that they have it. They refuse to give me the evidence. So why would they have evidence about a Boeing 777 fire suppression bottle? Because they know it's connected to MH370. Simple as that. So what does that lead us to? Fire scenario. Fire scenario. This was the underlooked scenario of MH370 that ended up being true. And it's a little embarrassing that more people didn't go with the scenario because there were multiple articles I found out there by multiple different people, by multiple experts claiming that it was almost certainly a fire. Some of them, before it was even revealed that there were lithium-ion batteries in the cargo of the plane. Not just a few, but a lot. 500 pounds of them. 487 to be exact. Now, in the MH370 video, in the drone video, we can see a heat signature in the belly of the plane. One of the first things people pointed out was fire. And the weird part was I didn't even consider the fire event back then. I didn't even know there were people considering it. So when people said fire, I initially, as the lead investigator, actually dismissed it. It wasn't until a couple months later, in October of 2023 as well, that I found Catherine T's sighting that were supporting the fire event. And I went, wait a minute, and started looking into it and realized it probably really was a fire. So we had 487 pounds of lithium-ion batteries assembled that day in a really sketchy way, I might add, if you just go look at the official report by the ATSB. And they missed 2 security screenings. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. 2 of the pallets of batteries that were unsafely packaged, clearly just looking at the pictures, just packaged in cardboard, were in the forward cargo bay next to the electronics bay. And this is basically exactly what happened to UPS Flight 6. This is what former security director of the FAA, Billy Vincent, told me in a personal conversation I had with him, that he already found the articles where he was already implying this before he knew about the batteries. And he said this is pretty much what happened to UPS Flight 6. When I spoke to him about where the batteries were, what have you, he said, I'm 100% sure it was a fire. He was 100% convinced it was fire. Mike McKay, a witness, saw MH370 on fire for a few seconds when it got dark. This was early in the morning, right at the exact same time the plane went dark, which would indicate that the fire would cause an electrical fire that damaged the electronics bay. There were then fishermen 10 minutes later off the coast that saw the plane flying low, going back the other way towards Malaysia. And then after the plane goes over to Malaysia and goes over Penang and doesn't land at Penang for whatever reason, it goes out into the ocean. And then Catherine T, in the middle of nowhere out in the ocean, sees the glowing orange plane flying low, no navigation lights, with smoke, dark smoke coming around the back of it, at around 1840 UTC in the Nicobar Islands. And she has multiple blog posts over the years. She's always stuck by her sighting and what she claims she saw. And I spoke to her personally as well, and absolutely believe that she doesn't a single dishonest thought or bone in her. She sounds like a person who's just telling it like she saw it, and she saw something absolutely incredible that night. So she sees the plane in that area, and her sighting corroborates the videos because we see the smoke coming off the plane in the videos, and we see the plane flying low in the videos because of the clouds. We can tell it's flying low. So it's perfectly consistent with her sighting, but not just her sighting. Also, only reported in the China Times, a Mayday intercepted from MH370 to the U.S. Navy by China of the plane disintegrating and attempting an emergency landing. And they even give a time. The time, 2:43 a.m. That's 1843 UTC. That's within 3 minutes of Catherine T's sighting. That's within 3 minutes of when we plotted the plane would be near those coordinates. Just having the plane going straight. So we have 3 sources of corroboration. 2 videos, military videos in perfect sync with location of them that we can figure out the time. Catherine T's sighting of seeing the smoke coming out the plane and the glowing orange with the fire. And then we also have an intercepted communication that implies the U.S. Navy is responsible. If they were communicating with the plane, they're the ones responsible. If they're the ones filming the videos, they're the ones responsible. I mean, it clearly implicates the United States Navy. And here it is. I'm just going to read it out. In addition, the U.S. Embassy in China said that at 2:43 a.m., the U.S. military base Tai Po, Thailand, monitored an emergency SOS signal from Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, in which the pilot of the plane called that the cabin was about to disintegrate and that they wanted to make an emergency landing. The U.S. Army in Thailand has provided this signal to the Malaysian side. What the actual hell? What the actual hell? There was only a few investigators talking about this early on, and no one talks about it since. You watch anybody's YouTube video about this other than mine, and you're not going to hear them mention this. I mean, why are we just ignoring the fact that there was an intercepted Mayday call of the plane on fire? What are you kidding me? Do I need more evidence that the plane was on fire? Okay, you need more? Here's more. What were they saying the day the plane disappeared? March 8th, when the plane disappears, what was the first thing they said? Usually the first thing they say is not going to be covered up yet, right? Because they're reacting emotionally and they're just trying to get information out. Then they have to stop giving information out and start coming up with a cover story. So what did they say right away? They say Subang Air Traffic Control lost contact at 2:40 a.m. What? You're claiming you lost contact the same time Catherine T saw the plane? Within 3 minutes of the Mayday call is the time you're saying you lost contact with the plane? And then they had to change that later on. They had to back away from it and say, no, just kidding. We lost contact way earlier than that. We lost contact at 1:30, not 2:40. We just forgot what time it was. You need more evidence? Why did they change the time? Why did they change the time of the last communication of the plane? We know why. So the videos explain why we didn't find a burnt up plane. You say, okay, if it was a fire, clearly it's a fire. I mean, look at how much evidence there is. Obviously a fire. Why did we not find a burnt up plane? This is an important point to make for a lot of the theories out there. Where's the plane? Well, when you watch the videos, you can tell why we didn't find a burnt up plane somewhere. At least somewhere where, keep in mind, the plane's not going to be able to stay on fire for 8 hours. Now, Billy Vincent actually tried to argue with me that it could stay on fire for many hours, but we've got a Mayday call. This sounds like this was a desperate situation. The videos indicate that this plane was about to go down. So, this was on its last legs because of this fire. It was not going to last that long. So we searched everywhere the plane would have gone down if it was a fire. That's the problem. But the videos come into play, and now we're watching something abnormal. Now we're watching something really, really abnormal. And now we have to throw out all of our orthodox thinking. We have to be heterodox thinkers now. And we have to remember that energy is neither created nor destroyed. And a Boeing 777 is an extremely massive object. 239 people on board. So if this was being turned into a bomb of some sort, we should be seeing a massive mushroom cloud here. It can't just be getting annihilated unless there's just completely changing the laws of physics. And some people would say, well, are you saying it was teleported? Yes. And then they would say, well, doesn't that break the laws of physics? No, actually. Surprisingly, teleportation does not break the laws of physics. It's just not accepted at the moment. Wormholes are what we would call teleportation. And a wormhole at the quantum level, ER equals EPR, is known as quantum entanglement. And there's this notion that quantum entanglement at the quantum level is basically little wormholes. And that then the answer would be all we have to do is make a wormhole at the large scale. And then if we do that, we now have achieved what we would call teleportation, which is, to really actually simplify it, faster than light travel from the person who's looking at the thing. When you demystify it, it's not as magical sounding and a lot more plausible. And if you think that that's outlandish, well, you know what? It is a little bit outlandish. I'm not going to lie to you. But at the same time, you look at how little we've progressed from a propulsion and engineering perspective in the last 50 to 70 years, and ask yourself why. And if that's really the case, and if imagine that if we were actually advancing, where would we be and what would we have? I think that everything lines up kind of nicely towards, we've just been hiding our progress on in those areas. So this was a U.S. Navy operation. Probably the CIA involved as well. I'm not too picky. Blame whichever military organizations you want, but this isn't just like a rogue band of people or what have you. I've considered those scenarios of rogue, Wakanda scenarios, what have you. Nah, this is a U.S. military. It's a U.S. military drone, General Atomics drone, U.S. Navy. It's over the water. The guy who leaked the videos is Navy. I mean, everyone's pointing to the Navy. So here's a picture that we made that shows where the plane would be getting teleported. Now I want to point out this technology we see here. This is just me giving you my kind of off the wall opinion on this. I don't think this technology is. I think they figured this technology out and they've been advancing it, but I think it has a long way to go. And we're not talking about teleporting people to Xenu or to the sun or something like that yet. We're talking about like local short distance teleportation. And that's what I think they did here. I think they did some sort of a short hop from the location where the plane was in the Nicobar Islands west, somewhere over here near the Maldives. And then that somehow I think put out the fire, which seems weird, but when you actually look at the physics, you realize that like this teleportation would be an endothermic event where it absorbs energy. And the weird thing about the lithium ion batteries is that the only reason why they're unstoppable is because they have so much energy packed into them. So if somehow that zap sucks the energy out of the batteries, the plane's just fine. I mean, if it was fine before, it's not going to keep burning up anymore. So it's like one of the first thoughts I had about this was like that would be like a really weird way to save the plane. Like imagine the weirdest way ever to save the plane is like put some orbs on it that like that puts the battery fire out. Like that would almost seem like you set the fire just to put it out yourself, like it's way too convenient. Like why would you, how could you have that planned? Don't worry, we're going to get to that. So the motive then, okay, why would the U.S. do something like this? Which they did. They did do this shit. They did this shit. Nobody believes it, but they did this shit. The answer is the Freescale Semiconductor engineers. I mean, if you assume that they did do it, then the Freescale Semiconductor engineers are undeniably the reason why. You got 20 people on the plane, all from the same company. They're all sitting next to each other. Some of them even have their family with them, but they're going on like a 1-week trip overseas. Seems really bizarre. It breaks policies, all company policies of like that have like intellectual property like this. This would break the policy that would say you shouldn't allow these people to all be on the same flight. And it's 9 or 8 of them are Chinese nationals. And the company has contracts with U.S. Aerospace and Defense. They also, and this was incredible, like I literally could never have imagined there would be this much incriminating evidence that points to the semiconductor people being the guys. There was a 2005 NSA security report about this company and a couple other companies, but mainly this company, about how they were advancing towards room temperature superconductive microchips, which guys, as nowadays, it's funny how much like the times have changed so much in the last 20 years or even the last 10 years where now people like when I talk about room temperature superconductive microchips, people are immediately thinking like, oh, quantum computers, AI, stuff like that. Yes. So yes, we know that's the shit, right? That's the jam. So we had these people on board the plane. Okay. And they had just launched a major initiative serving the RF power needs for U.S. Aerospace and Defense. So what are the possible narratives? So I will not get offended if people are pushing narratives that actually fit the evidence. Actually, I don't get offended at all, but that primarily I prefer ones that prefer this. So one is counter-espionage. You're preventing defectors from going to China with intellectual property. This could be a spy versus spy kind of situation. In fact, I think that's what it is. Could be a show of force. USA versus China versus Russia, some kind of shadow arms race to develop orb technology. Maybe it's UFO technology, alien technology, Atlantean technology. Who knows? Who cares? But maybe that's going on. In that case, this is like a who's your daddy moment. Like we're so far beyond where you're at. Like you got to look over your shoulder every time you do anything. This is like a moment where you do something like this to tell them like, we know everything you know. And we know that we own you. We own you, bitch. That's basically why you would do something like this. It could, though, also be a rescue operation. That plane was doomed. That landing in the ocean is going to break that plane apart. I don't care what some of these people try to claim about how, oh, it just perfectly land the plane in the ocean. A Boeing 777? No. Boeing 777 is going to rip up. Didn't you guys just see that plane? It was Alaska or Canada. It like hit the ice and then flipped over and the wings broke off. Like the moment one of your wings hits anything, it's the wings are going to crack off and that plane's going to do a barrel roll and crack in half. Anyone saying otherwise just has not seen planes and aerodynamics. So this plane was doomed. So maybe there was a VIP passenger that called in their rescue me button or get out of jail free card that just said, save me. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty weird that and also the fact that it could have put out the fire. It seems very organized, like too organized, like way too organized, actually. It could also have been an experiment. You know, if this technology is relatively new and they generally know what it does, you know, maybe they thought, okay, here's the perfect opportunity to use it. We're going to kill these people anyway, or whatever we plan to do to them. You know, might as well zap them with some orbs and see if they come out the other side deformed like hills have eyes type people, or if they, you know, are okay. Or maybe they come back with mustaches from the bizarro dimension. Who knows? Maybe it's alien technology and we have to test it out before we use it on the aliens or something that we're going to fight. I don't know. Once again, I don't care what the answer is. I just want us to admit that the United States Navy, did this to the plane because clearly they did. Now, I want to point out everybody was blaming the United States. For some reason, the world ignores this. Like everyone just acts like nobody knows who did it. Everyone's blaming the United States except for the United States. Everyone. Russia, the GRU report claims the United States Navy diverted the plane. China Times is saying that the U.S. Navy had communications with MH370, clearly implicating the U.S. Navy. The Prime Minister of Malaysia, Mahathir, the most respected Prime Minister ever in Malaysian's history, who was Prime Minister right before this happened and after this happened, and he had a guy in between his time that came in and said the plane went into the South Indian Ocean, and then that guy went to prison for being a criminal. And then the other prime minister came back again, and he said that the CIA did it. So Malaysia's prime minister said the CIA did it because they did do it. Because they did do it. Because they clearly did it. Because he's like, of course they saw the plane. You're an idiot if you think the United States government doesn't know exactly what happened to MH370. They know exactly what happened. I'm not talking about vaguely. They know exactly what happened and why it happened and everything. And anybody claiming the United States government doesn't know has not been paying attention, has not looked at the FOIA requests or the stack of FOIA rejections that I have from every agency in the United States about MH370. And if they were not involved, there'd be no reason for the level of secrecy involved in this plane. It was also reported that Malaysia was given information by the United States on condition that they not reveal it, which is probably that we orbed the plane away and they can't talk about it. China leaked satellite imagery onto the internet. They leaked satellite imagery onto there on March 12th, 4 days after the plane goes away. They leak imagery onto the internet that looks really similar to what we're seeing in the satellite video. It just looks like it's further away, like it's not as good resolution. And it's a still image as opposed to a video, but it looks like three objects spinning around something else with low altitude cumulus clouds. Pretty unusual that China just leaked these images on the internet and had people think like, oh, it's a debris field somewhere. And then they search, there's no debris field. So what was this? What was this all about? It looks like this is a message to the United States intelligence agencies saying, we know what you did. We know you're responsible. And we can corroborate that. Why? Because China hacked the Malaysian government on March 9th, 3 days prior. And they stole the crisis meeting minute notes and classified info about MH370. So they stole, most likely, the classified communications between MH370 and the United States Navy. United States Navy was in communication with the plane, and they classified those communications, and China stole them. And so China knew 100% that the United States Navy was responsible. And this was them saying, we know what you did. The French father on the Netflix documentary was told that there were 2 American AWACS spy planes in the area, and the Americans know what happened. Everybody was saying the Americans did it. Everybody. Edward C. Lynn, U.S. Navy special operator, U.S. Navy implied. Even the U.S. Navy was saying they did it, or the U.S. military was saying they did it. I couldn't believe this. There's even a quote. Confirmed Sibbers provided data to the intelligence community to help solve the mystery of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. This is the art of what we do, says Colonel Mike Jackson, 460th Operation Group Commander at Buckley. Officials at the 460th Space Wing, that's actually where the Space Wing is, confirmed that Sibbers provided technical data to the intelligence community to help solve the mystery of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, which disappeared over the Indian Ocean March 14th, 2014. Does anyone out there still don't think that the United States knows what happened to the plane? Everybody says the United States did it, including the United States literally admitting that their Sibbers system knows what happened to the plane. And we're looking at leaked, possibly Sibbers video of the plane recorded by the United States intelligence agencies. I'm actually a little bit surprised that it's this hard to convince people at this point. Isn't that like beyond any shadow of a possible doubt? Like case closed. What else is there to even discover? So the cover up, obviously the United States did it, no question. So can we show how they prove? Can we prove the lie? Yeah, we can prove the lie as well. Oh, this isn't the thing. Okay, so there's some interesting facts about the plane, about the cover up here. So the satellite coordinates could only be the Nicobar Islands because the videos predate the whole South Indian Ocean narrative. The videos say they were received March 12th, 2014, but the South Indian Ocean narrative was not even developed March 13th, till March 13th. And when and who pushed that? Unnamed U.S. officials, aka intelligence officials, started leaking information to the media on March 13th that that MH370 flew into the South Indian Ocean. Now, not only are we implicating the U.S. military, but they're the ones who spread the fake story that the plane went into the South Indian Ocean. They're the ones who sent us to the wrong location. Why are we believing the people that literally everybody said was responsible? It's like going to the killer and asking where the bodies are at. They're not going to send you to the real location. The real location is Diego Garcia, by the way. We're going to get to it in a minute. That's where the plane went. So the White House was calling Malaysia every day. Again, there's no reason for the White House to be calling Malaysia every day. You leave that to your State Department. There was one adult American on board the plane. Why would the White House be calling every day? And you think, oh, because they care so much, then why was that President Obama's first press conference about MH370 wasn't until 10 days later on March 17th? I think it was March 17th, maybe March 19th. He waited 10 days to talk about MH370. Why? Because he had to wait till the cover story was built. Why didn't Obama talk about the missing plane the next day? It's like I would have expected a press conference literally on March 8th about the plane disappearing. Instead, he waited 10 days to even discuss it. And then after that, he went to Malaysia. For the first time, any president has gone to Malaysia in over 50 years. Obama goes to Malaysia the next month in April. And he gets a couple sound bites about MH370, but barely discusses it. And never discusses MH370 publicly ever again. Go check it. I couldn't believe it. I asked AI. I looked myself. President Obama never discussed MH370 ever again after he visited Malaysia in April. At least not in any public way, in any serious way. I mean, if you couldn't ask for a perfect lineup to incriminate the United States, and they're acting exactly how you would act if you were the person who was the person who perpetrated the crime, and then was covering it up. Also pointing out that Rolls-Royce was silent, even though they have two engines that transmit data independently, and that these engine data should have been transmitting, but that data has never been revealed publicly. Why? Because the data would show what really happened to the plane, and they couldn't allow that to happen. There were Cope Tiger and Cobra Gold exercises that had just begun and ended that were happening in the exact area, and Cope Tiger's operations that year was search and rescue, which corroborates the search and rescue code names from Edward C. Lynn's flight manifests that he was caught with. So actually, the literal Cope Tiger theme that year was search and rescue. So there's no way all of the U.S. Navy assets would have been in the area, because there was military exercises going on right there in the area where we had the coordinates happening. So the assets were there. You've got the right time for it to happen. And this also proves as well the U.S. knows what happened. You're not going to have a rogue Boeing 777 flying past U.S. military exercises and them not see it. Makes no sense. As Matthias Chang said, it's like flying into the heart of the storm. You're going like the exact wrong way to take a plane. The Minister of Defense admitted that he was in contact with the U.S. about spy satellites in the region. And if you don't believe me, well,
there are U.S. spy satellites over the regions. Are we in touch with them?
Yes, we are in touch with
Could you elaborate?
them.
Sir, he knows whether or not you've received data from the engine manufacturer, Rolls-Royce?
Yes.
So yes, they were in touch with the United States, and yes, they had received data from Rolls-Royce, which was never been made publicly available. Once again, all I'm doing is showing the receipts from the publicly available press conferences. You can find them out there. Now, the Minister of Defense also said that they knew the plane was not hostile, which means they had communications with the plane that they have not revealed. This is so important because I've just told you that there was United States military communications with the plane, that they must have been classified, and that China probably stole those communications. Well, we have the military, the number one official in Malaysia related to the case, the Minister of Defense, literally admits they knew the plane was not hostile. This is only possible if they had communications with the plane that they have not revealed. Otherwise, if you did not have communications with the plane, you could never rule out a pilot, rogue pilot, or a hijacking scenario. Those both require communications to confirm. So let's listen to him in his own words.
Not send the jets up if you have conceded earlier that you knew very early in the morning the plane was missing. There was 4.5 hours time in which to respond and find out.
It was not hostile, it was commercial, it was from our airspace. We're not at war with anybody.
If they did go up, in hindsight, would you agree that we wouldn't be in the situation we are now, which is
I don't
7
think
weeks of
so. I
searching
don't think that's
and billions of
speculative.
dollars?
Even if we send it back, are you going to say that we're going to shoot it down?
No. Jesus.
Well, you said that, not me.
No, I'm asking you.
Why is he asking her?
So what's the, if we're not going to shoot it down, what's the point of sending it up?
To see where it's going.
Well, to see it going, you need a fighter for that?
Apparently we do.
About military procedures.
Well, the radars are all off,
if
apparently.
I did shoot it down, you'll be the first to say, how can you shoot down a commercial airline with 14 nationals, half of them Chinese? I'll be in a worse position probably.
Why shoot it down, though, if it's not hostile?
Well, the Americans would.
Why that weird statement at the end about what the Americans would do? Creepiest thing I've ever heard. I've never seen a more guilty person ever in my life. It's not incompetence. It was maliciousness. Absolute maliciousness. Why not send up the plane? He says right at the beginning, they knew it was a commercial airliner and not hostile. How'd you know that? The ACAR system wasn't turned on. It was not on flight radar. But you knew it was a commercial plane and it wasn't hostile? Boy, that's some incredible. Is that he's either Miss Cleo the psychic or they had communications with the plane. It's a very simple fact that can't be denied. And it's one of the things that you won't see any of the other investigators bring up because they can't really deal with evidence that goes against their preconceived notions about what they think happened in the plane, even when it's undeniable. I mean, there's no other interpretation. There's no other interpretation from what he's saying. Their interpretation is basically everything they disagree with is a lie or fake or whatever they need it to be. Bizarre. Okay. Now, there's even more stuff that implicates the United States. I can't believe how much there is. There's a clip of Florence Echangi, who did a lot of on the boots, on the ground research. Shout out to her. Nephew of the pilot was told that his uncle was collateral damage. Now, the only situation that I've ever heard people use the word collateral damage is when the government is killing people. Is there any other situation when people are referred to as collateral damage? I'm pretty sure it's only when the government is killing people. So this would imply it was a government operation that happened to the plane. The former head of Indonesian police was told, quote unquote, what really happened to MH370, which implies there's a real story and then there's the story that's being told to the public. So once again, these are like people who are officials that were in the know, just telling the truth, and nobody wants to believe them when they tell the truth. They only want to believe the fictional story that's being told in the media. And then just to add this on there, weirdly, there's 2 Iranian fake passengers who are using stolen passports, traveling together, and changed their appearance to look like the people in the passports. And they were just dismissed in one day after the plane disappeared as well. They were just refugees, like they were trying to go to Amsterdam, but they were going to Beijing for reasons that, whatever. What? We're just going to gloss over that a plane disappeared and there's like 2 people from a, let's say, adversarial country to the United States that are fake passengers on stolen passports. Okay. I guess we'll ignore that. If they were operatives, they would be exactly what we'd be looking for. I'll just leave it at that. Now, where'd the plane go? It went to Diego Garcia. Why did it go to Diego Garcia? It's the only place for the plane to go. It's the only place. Everybody was saying, including Mark Dugain, who's a famous author and got a lot of heat for it. And so, some people claim that he was told to stop looking into it. Catherine T., the witness, she also, and I think it was her 2018 blog post I have a link to above, says I think she said she now agrees the plane went to Diego Garcia. And every other conspiracy theory out there was saying the plane was remote controlled there or whatever. I think it was Field McConnell saying that. And why? Because Diego Garcia is like a NASA landing strip, perfect location. There's got to be underground stuff there. There was a Maldives sighting at a small island in the early morning hours where a bunch of islanders saw the plane and a red and white stripe of Malaysian Airlines flying south towards Diego Garcia. The pilot had Diego Garcia in his simulator for some weird reason, even though it's not open to commercial aircrafts. And then there was a no departures from Diego Garcia for 72 hours after March 8th, which is pretty damn suspicious. Wait, so there's just going to be no departures for 3 days after the plane lands there, which is probably what happened. I mean, that's pretty convenient, pretty incriminating. Oh, and in case you wanted the logs, well, the flight logs were just all destroyed by water damage in July of 2014. If you don't believe me, go look it up. I absolutely can't. You could not make this story up. The Diego Garcia flight logs were destroyed by water damage in July of 2014, just a few months after MH370. What a coincidence. Too bad. Would have been convenient to have those flight logs, but they were just too shame. 2014, we didn't have computers in 2014, guys. It was the Stone Ages in 2014, Everything was still on paper in 2014. I know that I worked on paper. It has underground facilities with black vault FOIA requests showing that it may be a CIA black site, aka that has prisoners on there. There was a message from Philip Wood posted on 4chan saying that he's held captive with just a black picture, but the EXIF data in the picture has coordinates placing it in Diego Garcia where they think that they have these CIA black site prisons, which is like, man, if you were coming up with a story about where the plane went, you couldn't be more on the nose. Well, it went to a military it was a U.S. military operation. It went to a secret U.S. military base that's more secret than Area 51 that no one's allowed to go to. That if you wash ashore there, like some refugees did a few years ago, you're not allowed to leave ever. They were stranded there for 3 years. I think they finally were legally forced to allow them to leave. And if you go work at Diego Garcia, you have to take like a 2-year deal, and you're not allowed to communicate with anyone outside your life for 2 years. Like you can't have communications outside the base. There were actually a weird situation where there were photos on Facebook that look vaguely similar to the crew. This was in like 2020 or 2021. So for the people that want to know what happened to the people, I don't know. They're probably not alive. If they are, then maybe they're living on Diego Garcia. That's if you want to dream and be very optimistic. My view is that everybody, if almost everybody, if not everybody, succumbed to the smoke from the fire because people don't realize how dangerous, maybe even the U.S. government didn't realize how dangerous lithium-ion battery smoke was back then. It's one inhalation and game over. Like that's how dangerous and toxic that smoke is. So I personally don't think that anybody could have survived even to get to the point where the plane was being zapped, except for like the pilot, because the pilot has the special hood that's like the one that can last for like several hours compared to like the shitty thing that comes from the sky that you're done if that's all you've got, the thing that comes from the top of the plane. Okay, we only got a few more things to go through here. Also, just want to point out that there is this ground-based electric optical deep space surveillance system that's got a site at Diego Garcia. So they've got some pretty advanced stuff in Diego Garcia that they're covering up there. Maybe not anymore now that it's been exposed, but they did. Now, the Inmarsat pings. The most theories are based on this idea that the plane flew in the South Indian Ocean, and it's all based on 10 rows from Inmarsat that were never corroborated by anybody. And when I say corroborated, I mean by like a different source. I don't mean corroborated by like we both looked through the same shitty data and came to the same shitty conclusion. I mean like somebody else has data that corroborates your data. That's how data works. If people don't understand that concept, then like I guess you're not an expert. I guess I'm a database expert because this is actually my real job that I have 20 years of experience on. Is databases like this. Now, I could fake these 10 rows on an Excel spreadsheet in 5 minutes. If you gave me what I needed to know, I could fake it in about 5 minutes. It's actually just straight up trivial to fake these 10 rows in the Excel spreadsheet. And these 10 rows in this Excel spreadsheet here represent, I think 6 hours, 5 hours of flight time. 5 hours of flight time. This is all we've got. This is the only reason why everyone who thinks the plane went in the South Indian Ocean, this is the only evidence they have, what you see highlighted in green right there. And you can see quite clearly, if you were to look at the whole data set, there's a massive deviation when it gets to this area in green. When it gets to this area in green, all of a sudden, the way that the satellite's pinging changes entirely. It goes from pinging like sporadically, like every like 15 to 25 minutes, to only pinging every hour on the hour. Like, or not every hour on the hour, but every hour, like exactly 1 hour from the last hour, plus a couple seconds. It's like, why is it so different all of a sudden? I asked the investigators who literally came up with the model and reviewed this. They couldn't answer the question. They couldn't answer that basic question about data that anybody that has done any database work ever or with any relational databases, which are basically Excel spreadsheets, should be able to answer. Super simple question. That's how easy it is to lie to people. 10 rows on an Excel spreadsheet that my 7-year-old nephew could fake. It took the U.S. government like 10 weeks to fake this. They didn't release this data until May 27th, 2014. The MH370 videos had already been on the internet for over a week. They'd already been published on the internet, on YouTube. People were watching them for a week, and this hadn't even been released yet. So we're thinking Somebody couldn't fake 10 rows on a spreadsheet, but they faked two videos in perfect synchronization of U.S. military telling a perfect story of what really happened to MH370. It's incredible to me how people who call themselves skeptics don't apply the skepticism to the people who are presenting that they want to believe. Skeptics should look at this and go, this doesn't make any sense. What happened here? Why is this data all of a sudden change here at the exact moment where right above this, you see, what time does this say right before the green? Right before this data changes, what time does it say? 1840 UTC. Wow. That's the exact same time Subang Air Traffic Control lost contact with the plane, the same day the plane disappeared. That is one hell of a coincidence, chat. The exact same moment that Subang Air Traffic Control says they lost contact with the plane, the same moment we're seeing the plane in two videos filmed by the U.S. military, all of a sudden at that same time, the data changes in the satellite data. For the people saying Yahtzee, yes, Yahtzee. Why? I formally called out Inmarsat for fraud. Absolutely no question. This data is fraudulent, fake, spoofed, whatever they did to it to make it. I don't know what they did. That's not MH370. If it is, then the methodology that was used to determine that we're in the South Indian Ocean, then that's flawed or fake, whatever. Something about this is fake, clearly. And it looks to me like somebody just fudged 10 rows on an Excel spreadsheet. That's my professional opinion as somebody that's worked on databases for 20 years. I can write SQL data and update statements, and I can write multi-table queries that are relatively extensive. Okay. Now, the rogue pilot theory. The number one theory at the moment, and this was not the number one theory. At the time the plane disappeared, the rogue pilot theory was considered like 3% or less. Basically, nobody thought that it was possible because there was nothing indicating it. It's not like they didn't leave any notes. There was no manifesto, nothing to indicate that the guy did it or anything like that. Nothing. There was no evidence for it. He had 18,000 flight hours, and everyone stood up for him, including the officials, the wife, coworkers. Everybody said he was an awesome guy and he would never do it. Florence DeChangi even got access to his medical records. His family was so adamant they gave his medical records to Florence DeChangi to prove that his mental psych screening was all perfect. The flight path contraindicates a suicide route. A suicide route is not going to go back to the nearest airport. Suicide route's going to go in a random ass direction because you don't care. You're also not, like a lot of people have argued that the plane was going between radar zones. That's not how that works at all. But if you are a suicidal pilot, you don't care about radar zones. If somebody comes up and shoots down your plane, you don't care because you're going to take the plane down anyway in a suicidal pilot scenario. I also want to point out real quickly as well that the argument that people make that like the pilot was avoiding radar doesn't actually make any sense at all. So when people like Mentor Pilot, I think is the biggest one who promoted this misinformation, and he should apologize, honestly, for being so horribly wrong in his analysis. I mean, I think he's probably in normal situations a decent guy, but his MH370 video is complete garbage. And he promoted this myth that like the pilot turned off the system to avoid radar. But here's the thing. You can't avoid radar that way. Radar is going to see you anyway. And if your argument is, oh, well, they weren't in your zone. Well, you're telling me that they turned themselves off from flight radar. So yes, if I see an unidentified object on radar, you're going to report it. In fact, that's the only thing you're looking for. If you're looking at the radar, is you're looking for unidentified objects that are not on the flight tracker. And the whole argument being made is that the plane went dark off the flight tracker. So you've got a plane on your radar, off the flight tracker. You don't give a shit if it's technically in Malaysia's zone. If you're Thailand, we don't care about that. You're seeing an unidentified object on your radar. Yeah, it might be coming for you. It might be coming for one of your buildings or your towns. So that argument is really dumb, and it's contraindicated by itself. if you were trying to avoid radar, you wouldn't turn off the ACAR system. You would leave it on. You would leave the ACAR system on so it looks like you're just having an emergency event when you're actually hijacking the plane. The last thing you want to do is bring attention to yourself by turning the system off that's tracking you. If you do that, then everybody's going to be looking for you on your radars, and they're going to see you because, spoiler alert, civilian airliners don't have stealth capabilities. That's a good clip. Okay. The Germanwings pilot in 2015 who took that plane down, he locked the co-pilot out, and he didn't go on a joyride for 8 hours. He crashed the plane in under 10 minutes. He basically just flew it directly into a mountain. That's what you do when you're a suicidal pilot. You cannot lock people out of the cockpit for 8 hours. This myth where he's going to like go super high, knock everybody out and all this bullshit. No, not in a Boeing 777. And what's going to happen is someone's going to break through one of the panels, or they're going to get through the door or whatever, and they're going to get to you. That's what happens in a high tension situation where all of a sudden you're locking people out and doing some crazy shit to the plane. So that's not what happened with MH370. Now, the simulator data. Now, Jeff Wise, I believe, in New York Magazine was the first one to promote the misinformation that I still hear spread around all the time. So do your best to fight this misinformation that the simulator route was being practiced by the pilot. This couldn't be more fake. Could not be more fake. Jeff Wise spread it because he's the biggest source of misinformation about MH370. That's not being me being mean. That's just a factual statement. Jeff Wise has to live with the decisions that he's made in his life. And writing that article that claimed that the pilot was practicing the simulator data was super fake. It was wrong. He should feel bad for doing it, and he should apologize for doing it. Because here you go. This is an actual route of the simulator data over the top of various real flights of 150 that was from Jeddah or from Kuala Lumpur to Jeddah. You can see it's a direct match. He was actually scheduled to fly this route February 4th, 2 days before he was 2 days after he was practicing it. So no, he was not practicing the simulator data, the route. That was all fake. He was literally just practicing the route that he was scheduled to fly. This is not the route MH370 took that we're looking at here either. This is also not the route MH370 took. I just want to point that out too, because this is just probably the biggest point I should point out from this here is that Jeff Wise literally just made up a complete fiction where a non-matching route he claimed matched what happened to MH370, not even remotely close. Complete fiction. Completely just from whole cloth, Jeff Wise invented a completely fake narrative that did contraindicated by reality, and the FBI and officials corrected it. And yet people still to this day, 10 years later, still believe that the misinformation that Jeff Wise intentionally spread about MH370. Honestly, Jeff Wise is the last person on the planet that should ever, ever, ever talk to anybody else about misinformation. Like literally, he's the worst offender. Okay? So there you go. And just here's a direct quote from the officials, just in case anybody really is still trying to spread this myth. The people that are out there pushing this shit that the pilot did it, you got to just start coming to accept reality. There's no evidence the pilot did it. We have examined the pilot and the first officer, and we are quite satisfied with their background, their training, and their mental health. We are not of the opinion that it could have been an event committed by the pilot. Simple as that. Now, let me just ad hoc real and point out that for a lot of people, the problem is they don't have an inner monologue. They don't have the ability to think for themselves. And for those people, they need there to be a normal explanation for what happened in this plane. There must be in their minds, because in their reality is so plain and fake that there is no room for an extraordinary thing to occur. There's no room for a narrative outside what they're told to believe to happen. And so for those people, they have to ignore all of this because they need there to be some plain Jane explanation for where this plane went. But there is not. There is not one of those explanations. It is, in fact, we've ruled them out all out tonight conclusively. The plane didn't go to the South Indian Ocean, didn't crash in the ocean at all. The debris contraindicates the entire search effort. The debris doesn't even prove the plane crashed. We have no evidence for the plane even crashing. No conclusive evidence. And this is what the family members were also saying. At some point, people have to go back and go like, why am I believing the things that I'm choosing to believe? All that I did was come into this whole situation with no biases. I had no biases. I had an open mind. Although I didn't believe that we had magic orbs or any of that, but I came in with no biases and took a fresh look at all the evidence with, an unbiased perspective. And the story that you're hearing tonight is what I concluded based on the evidence, all the evidence that's out there, not just like a cherry picking of the evidence like you see in a lot of these YouTube videos, but the totality of the evidence, even the evidence that people don't want to believe. Now, some of the other scenarios like the shoot down and the emergency event scenarios that I hear discussed some cases, the problem with those is the same problem with the fire emergency event without the orbs. Where's the plane? Where's the debris field? If a plane was shot down in the sky, the debris is going to shatter over tens of miles. People are going to be picking it up in their backyards. There's no way you could cover up a Boeing 777 with 239 people exploding over somewhere. There'd be YouTube videos of plane blowing up in the sky. Even emergency events don't make any sense. If it was some kind of fire, we need the videos to be real because we can't otherwise explain where the plane went up, where the plane went down. Where is it then? Plane was on fire. It can't fly forever. Where'd it go? And there's other variations on these theories as well. People have claimed that they've seen debris in the water when they're not. They're just, there's that mind. I forget what that psychology term is where they just imagine seeing stuff when they're not seeing it. So there are no real legitimate other competing theories. It had to be a state-sponsored operation. And all the states involved, including the United States, were blaming the United States, saying that they know. Now, quickly, the science. Okay, I redid the science, just simplified it. Let's just simplify it. 0 point energy, number one. That's the number one discovery that we can conclude from the videos. 0 point energy is real. It's the missing link in physics. It explains mass, inertia, gravity, dark energy, and dark matter. Just all the things that we don't understand. It turns out it explains them all. Some examples, if you want to read, would be Planck ether hypothesis by Friedwart Winterberg. A beautiful theory. And the beauty of the 0 point energy and the ether hypothesis is that this theory in science sits directly on top of our current perspective of physics and cosmology. And when I say that, I mean that you can add this vacuum energy in, and it doesn't change anything about our reality at all. So physics still works. We don't have to rewrite everything. Bravo. Sweet. And then, of course, the OG, the final boss, the king of gatekeep disclosure, Hal Puthoff in space-time metric engineering. That's one of the DERDs. And then gravity is a 0 point fluctuation force. These are two of my favorite papers ever that explain how you can manipulate space-time and why gravity is not a fundamental force, but in fact, just an induced pressure effect based on relative energy densities of 0 point energy, meaning the energy densities are like the way the peaks and the valleys of the amount of energy in space-time. Okay, space-time engineering. So some of the best papers about space-time engineering. Traversable wormholes, stargates, and negative energy by Eric W. Davis. This is one of the DERDs. And warp drives, dark energy, manipulation of extra dimensions by also Eric W. Davis. These papers basically explain how we can produce negative energy and make warp drives and wormholes, and how you can survive a wormhole. And they actually corroborate what we see in the videos in terms of a release of photons happening and like this umbra effect that we see occur in the videos. So those are extremely important to understand how warp drives are not just fiction, that like the #1 physicist that works with the government on black projects is writing papers explaining exactly how to produce negative energy, while all the mainstream academics are going, negative energy is an exotic substance. Meanwhile, this guy's going, no, it's a pressure effect, and here's how we can make a negative pressure effect that's a negative energy, and this is how we then can make a warp drive. It's like, boy, that's quite the shift between academia and the black project physicists. Maybe we should go with the black project physicist on this one. And then my favorite guy, Salvatore Pais, U.S. Navy engineer, says that I'm probably going to get myself killed if I keep pushing this, but you know what? We don't care. Salvatore Pais says patents are 100% real, 1,000% real. He deserves the credit for his patents. Specifically, in this case, high energy electromagnetic field generator. This is how we can produce electromagnetic field intensities that are not believed to be possible under normal circumstances. The way this is possible is via the ether. If you add in the ether, if you say that space-time is not empty, then it opens the door to now achieving energy densities that are beyond what conventional physics thought was possible. And this allows us to get to points where we can get up towards the Schwinger limit, where now space-time reality breaks down, aka we produce a wormhole. Simple, right? And then his other patent, my favorite one actually, is the high-frequency gravitational wave generator, where we learn that there is a relationship between high frequencies and manipulating gravity, manipulating the zero-point energy. And that once we do this, it opens the door to everything you see in Star Trek. Warp drives, wormholes, you know, it also points out that quantum effects at the macroscopic scale are what we're doing, and we're achieving it via superconductivity. If you listen to Salvatore Pais, it's all about cold plasmas, non-equilibrium plasmas. And the way that we are breaking through the ultraviolet catastrophe, where we would say that you can't amplify energy beyond this limit, is that we are breaking equilibrium. That only applies for equilibrium thermodynamics. This is why Salvatore Pais quotes Elia Prigogine. Why? Because Elia Prigogine did his work on non-equilibrium thermodynamics. If you break something into a non-equilibrium thermodynamic state and then stabilize it in that form, you can go beyond what we think is possible right now. Now, how do you do that? I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that. You create your non-equilibrium cold plasma ball, manipulate it via magnetic fields, and you pull the electrons from the ions. So you have your electrons all combined over here, and we see them as the yellow little shape, U-shape in there, the fusion shape, and you separate them, and then you get them stuck that way. And now you've got a huge energy density ball. That's how you do it. And then you take those huge energy density balls and you jam them together, just like you would do a couple of magnets. And what happens? Well, if you get too much energy, too much force, apparently you rip through space-time. Now, if you want more papers about those concepts, as opposed to me just explaining it to you, I recommend the following 4 papers on non-equilibrium plasmas. Vortex motion can be used to stabilize ball plasma. As I mentioned, this is mentioned in multiple papers. So you can read, there's several EVO papers by Ken Shoulders on exotic vacuum objects, which are these cold plasmas. My favorite one is probably Permittivity Transitions, which discusses how the plasma basically manipulates space-time and how you're manipulating the permeability and permittivity of space-time, which is how we can start to do impossible things that are, we would call free energy. Force-free time harmonic plasmoids by Jack Nechamkin. We actually just found out that he replied to somebody on Reddit last year. He's like 85, 86, maybe even 87 now. He wrote a paper. This paper is all about how to stabilize your plasma ball using vortexes. That's basically what this is. This whole paper is basically about how to make a ball of plasma and make it stabilized. Crazy. And then, of course, ball lightning study by, once again, Eric W. Davis shows up again. This ball lightning study has a normal ass name like ball lightning study. It's actually all about coherent, stabilized plasmas and how to extract energy from them, like their applications of the plasmas. Wild. They always give them weird names because then nobody will ever look at them. But than I did. And then cold fusion, okay? So cold fusion, why is cold fusion related? Because the heat signatures of the orbs, that yellow shape, that Tesla shape that we see, that's a fusion. Go look at the Department of Energy's website on fusion. You see that exact same heat signature. It's a very distinct heat signature of fusion. The hotter parts of the electrons, the colder parts of the ions, and then read Salvatore Pais' plasma compression fusion device, where his equations 7, 8, and 9 talk about amplifying energy. And this is where I mentioned the ultraviolet catastrophe that says, well, you can't really amplify it beyond a certain degree. And what Salvatore Pais is saying here is, yes, you can. And this is the thing that would get me killed, and I'm just going to say, is that we can amplify energy beyond what the ultraviolet catastrophe thinks, and we do it by conditioning the vacuum. Conditional possibilities. How do we get around it? We change the conditions. We change the permeability and permittivity of free space, and then we can amplify energy infinitely. Infinite energy, free energy is 100% possible and real. But it also is probably going to lead to the end of the world. Spoiler alert. Okay, I'm not going to go through all this. Oh, maybe I'll go through a little bit of this. So the debunk stuff, people who say the videos are fake, whatever, I do separate stuff going through all the debunk stuff. But I just want to point out, we had a $150,000 bounty. No one ever came forward with any evidence that they made the videos. You would have to have better VFX skills than people who did like Top Gun Maverick. There was a really funny comment on Reddit early on about like all the requirements that somebody would have had just to like get the engineering of the plane scaled down correctly. Like even just doing that is like a movie magic that people have to do. Lead editor of Marvel Studios, Jeffrey Ford, early on, I think it was with Total Disclosure podcast, he was friends with Jeffrey Ford. Jeffrey Ford reviewed it, said it would take like 4 to 6 months with today's level of technology. And this is, again, pointing out that you have to have a storyboard, like you're presenting this narrative of a fire on board the plane and all this stuff in the videos. Like this isn't a situation where you just are like, oh, I'm just going to add a goofy looking UFO to this video. No, this is like a whole thing to make these videos. You'd have to have better understanding of physics than most PhDs do. And then just as a joke, you'd have to understand now not to use low quality 90s video game effects, or you'd have to know how to turn a 2-dimensional cloud picture. One of the big debunks is that there's a cloud. They claim that there's cloud pictures, but the problem is that the videos predate the pictures. So they have a big issue with that. There's no actual evidence the pictures predate the videos. In fact, the evidence says that they posted the videos by like 2 years. And it doesn't matter anyway, because you can't use 2-dimensional cloud pictures to make a 3-dimensional environment, which we've already proven is required for the videos. So it's undeniable the videos are real. All the debunk attempts to date have fallen woefully short. This includes the VFX comparison, where people have claimed that this 90s video game, if you think there's a 90s video game effect in the videos I showed at the beginning of this, like, I don't really know what to tell you, but I will go ahead and show you here that we took an exact overlay of that effect into the video, like frame by frame. And you can see it right here on your screen, full screen. And very clearly, you can see whoever told you these things were the same lied to you. The only frame that's similar is this one, and it's clearly not a perfect match. In fact, the middle isn't even close to the same. The middle in this graphic is some kind of weird plasma ball with things sticking out of it. And the background is like a amorphous black blob. They got like one partial match on one edge and then claimed that the whole thing matches. But then the next frame, this frame's not even close to the same. And the next frame after that, again, not even remotely similar. In fact, that's it. And then the problem is there's even more frames now in the visual effect, but there's no frames left in the real video. So the number of frames in the graphic is 7, but the total number of frames in the video is only 4. So they have 3 extra frames also. So this stock effect was conclusively 100% not used in this video. No one changed it all around to get it to match. That's not how stock effects work. The point of the stock effect is you put the stock effect in there and that's over. And we can prove that too, because this stock effect was used in major motion pictures and it was never edited. It It was used in Anchorman. It was used in Starship Troopers. It was used in Eastbound and Down. It was used in major. None of them ever changed it. Eastbound and Down made it go like it angled it slightly. That was it. So it's 100% proven. That's not in the videos. Any other debunks that are worth addressing? Two more things I'll show real quick. One is the clip of the clouds moving, just because so many people are insistent that the clouds don't move. Oh, wait, that didn't work. So if you're if you're just listening to this, I'm showing a video that was made that speeds up the clouds, speeds up the video and shows a portion of it. There's even a longer version where people went through different segments and showed that all the different segments show evolving clouds. You just have to speed it up to see it because the clouds aren't moving very much. There probably wasn't very much wind that night. And but you can see the evolution of the clouds, which is not, some people try to claim it's some kind of like displacement map. I don't think they know what displacement maps are, because this is not displacement that we're looking at. We're looking at evolving. Evolving means changes and doesn't go back. Displacement map is just a distortion effect. And this is not a distortion effect. You're seeing something change and not go back to where it was before. So it's significant to point out those facts as well. And you can see it quite clearly there. Okay. And then I just want to point out for people, because for the cloud thing as well, because a lot of people got hung up on the cloud saga, which admittedly, you know, they tried their hardest to make the videos go away, and it was pretty extensive. But we do have confirmation that the photographer who claimed to take photos, he was on a flight to Japan. I mean, he at least has a ticket for it. The problem is the pictures that they were claiming were used in the satellite video were not taken from that flight. That's the issue. It seems like they were just inserted into an existing set of photos that already existed on the internet, and the photographer didn't know because he couldn't tell the difference. He couldn't tell his own photos. He's taking thousands of photos, right? So you just insert some photos into an existing set. The photographer would never know. And this is why he couldn't even recognize the photos in question on the website. He couldn't even recognize the photos. And so what I want to point out, first of all, two things. One is that there is proof that the photos that he uploaded from his Japan flight were on the internet before 2014. I'm trying to figure out how to do this now. Oh, okay, this is how you do it now. Okay, sorry. Here you go. So this picture right here, is it showing it? What is going on here? Oh, yeah, I don't know. It says, oh, there it is. Okay. StreamYard, get your shit together. So this picture right here shows the web archive, and this is one of the photos from the Japan flight that shows it was on the web archive. So it shows the photos in question did get archived prior to 2014. And yet, none of the photos claimed to be used in the MH370 videos are anywhere on the archive prior to the videos. In fact, the first time the pictures in question were ever seen anywhere on the internet by any of the archives, and this also proves that the website was being crawled by Google. So you can't claim that the website wasn't being crawled. This picture right here proves that the photos that Jonas had, that the real photos Jonas had, were already uploaded, the real ones. The fake photos in question, the ones that were supposedly that were argued to be used in the MH370 videos, were not uploaded until 2016. This is a super important fact to point out. It's not deniable because it's just a factual argument. We can just look at the evidence. Again, you can look at the evidence. Evidence doesn't lie. Here it is, right here. You're looking at it. These are the images that were supposedly used in the MH370 videos. You can see at the top of your screen, the first ever time they were archived was March 24th, 2016, and they were archived multiple times in that period, which proves they weren't on the internet before that. They didn't just magically get missed for 5 years. They were there. They're just not there in 2014. They only appeared in 2016. That was the first time right there. So anybody tries to claim that images were used to make the videos, you can claim one, no, they weren't. There's no possible way two-dimensional photos of clouds could be used to make the three-dimensional environment that was required to make these videos. And two, the cloud images in question post-date the videos by over 2 years. Simple as that. If anyone has any contrary evidence, and if you point that out, generally debunkers go into a fit because there is no counter. There is no counter. Facts speak for themselves. Okay, let's do some super chats, guys. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it, especially everybody listening on audio. Thank you guys very much for listening to the all solid evidence review stream. I hope that the world comes to understand that these videos are really what happened in the plane. I think it will take a while. It's obviously a lot to take in, but I think that evidence is overwhelming. If you want to help, the best thing that you can do is push on the United States government to tell the world what they know about the missing airliner. They know what happened to the plane. Even if you don't believe the videos are real, you have to accept the United States government knows what happened to the plane. No question, no doubt. The reason why people don't want to accept that is because then when they do, they realize that it means the videos kind of must be real, right? Okay. Thank you very much for these super chats ahead of time. Mark Scott, thank you, brother. Appreciate you. You're on fire. Oh, wow. And the huge one. Knocking down doors with hard work. Peace to the families. Yes. And so peace to the families. Also, the families probably don't believe this or accept this either, admittedly, but they never told me to stop. So I would think if it was my scenario, even if it was somebody who was going the crazy scenario, if it was me, I would still be fine with it because shit, nothing else is working. Nothing else is working. We haven't found anything in the South Indian Ocean. Might as well push on people to look at Diego Garcia. Truth Teller 86, thank you. Rip Ocean Infinity. Malaysia should pay Ashton $35 million. Yeah, since he solved the mystery. Yeah, they apparently just signed it today, but they've already been searching. And quick update, they are still searching again, but they aren't going to find anything, as I've already told you. And if you've reviewed this evidence today, they're not going to find anything in the South Indian Ocean. They're not. And even the people who say, oh, they're going to plant something. No, they're not. Think about all the effort it would go through to plant believable debris at this point in the game that doesn't float and all the bodies. It's never going to happen. They're just not going to find anything. And thank you again for that, Truth Teller, for that other donation. Rabbit Hole, thank you. Keep this up. And the CIA is going to bring back the dart gun for your ass. Watch Cornhole, brother. Honestly, I don't even care, man. I don't even care. I just don't want to live in a world that's a lie anymore. I just want there to be one true thing on this world. It seems like everything is fake. Academia is just big fraud. Media is just full of shit. Government's just committing black operations and hiding civilization technology. I just want one true thing, just to be pleased on this planet. Lone Wolf, thank you very much for that donation. What if the CIA produced all this? So this was another thing. What if the CIA did it? This is when you think, this is what I call hitting on 19. You're hitting on 19 here. You're thinking way too much into it, right? You're like, how can they be psyoping me into think about how elaborate. So you made a plan to psyop somebody into believing the fake plan using fake videos. It's just way, way too complicated. And what's the end goal? The main reason why this is not true, despite the logic that I just threw at you, is that who's implicated in the video? Oh, the United States military. So would the CIA, if they're doing this, would they implicate themselves? No. That wouldn't be an image of a General Atomics drone. That would be an image of some Chinese drone or an Iranian drone. If they were psyoping us, they're not going to blame themselves. They're going to be a video of China zapping the plane. Because then the disinformation is, oh, look what China did to it. Or look what Iran did to it. Now we're going to go to war with Iran. The way the videos play out, it only blames them. And if the CIA did produce it, then the media would be trying to spotlight me. CNN would be having me come on and promote this theory or what have you, right? Because they would want this psyop to get out there. In fact, as I mentioned on my last stream, no mainstream media has ever even reached out to me before, even though I've gone on over 100 podcasts, detailed explaining the evidence, the psychology of my understanding of the case and the leaker and all this stuff. Despite all of that fame, if you want to call it, attention maybe, Mainstream media has never reached out. That's what tells me the CIA that I'm right over the target, and this is a situation where the CIA doesn't want this out as opposed to wanting it out. Good question, though. And this is, honestly, I don't mean to be rude, but this is the dumbest argument that I hear out there, is that we're trying to convince other countries that we have technology that we don't have. That's not a thing that exists. That's not a thing that exists. I think people usually, when they make this just terrible argument, usually they try to say that, oh, well, during the Manhattan Project, we tried to spread disinfo to like throw people off. That's sabotage. It's claiming that we have magical technology that we don't have. That doesn't work. If you don't have it, then it just is not a threat. And if you're going to do some elaborate show to try to convince people, this isn't how you do it. You like leak it covertly to people, not in a public display, not with a real airliner that's really missing. No, we actually just did it. We actually just did that to the plane. That's the story that makes sense. Not the story that it's a reverse Uno super psyop against me. Like, I'm sorry, like a lot of you guys, though, you go way too far down the rabbit hole, because you need there to always be another layer to everything. For some people, there always needs to be another layer. In some cases, there can be, but discernment, critical thinking requires you to understand when to stop. That's what critical thinking is. There evidence that there's another layer to it? No. If the evidence is just you making it up in your head that a story, that's not evidence. Simple as that. That's how it works. So thank you for those donations, though. And again, I'm not trying to be rude, but I think it's important to educate people on that. Critical thinking works both ways. One is, don't be too blue-pilled, but also don't believe that there's always another layer to everything, and everything must be a distraction from everything else. Like, that's where you're way too, you're doing the same thing the blue-pilled people are doing, just on the opposite end of the spectrum. Mark Scott, wow. Thank you, brother. Huge donations. Appreciate you, man. You're the best. And then lastly, V. Have you heard of thunderstorm generator? Yes, I have. I've spoken about it several times. It's not doing what we're talking about here. It's not anywhere near what we're talking about here. It's basically a more efficient carburetor is what has been told to me. But still neat and still could be relevant. I do want to talk to Randall Carlson about that. Okay, any last questions before we close out tonight, guys, from the audience? I'm just looking through, see if I can find any. Did I miss anything big that people don't know? Where did the plane go and what happened to the people? I think I explained where I think that the plane went and what happened to the people. But again, the only people that can tell us to answer these questions about why you would do this, why you would record this, what actually happened for sure, is the U.S. military, the people that did it. Those are the people we should be asking the questions. I want to know the answer to those questions too. I want Edward Lynn to tell me. He probably knows the answer, right? Truth Teller says, if all flights, pre-water instructions tell us your seat can be used as a flotation device, where are all the floaties? This is another good point. There's 1,000 pounds of flotation devices missing. And that's just some of the stuff that floats. None was ever found. The point being, we just need to use basic logic, basic critical thinking capabilities. Part of the reason why so many people are afraid to talk to me about MH370, to have a contentious conversation, is because I bring up points like this and they'll just look like fools, because there is no counterpoint to something like that. Counterpoint is the ocean's really big. It's absurd. You're going to get destroyed in a live conversation with making arguments like that. And then One Tact 100, thank you very much, man. You guys have been going on fire. I appreciate you guys' donations. You guys, thank you, MH370X. You guys are awesome. Yeah, there was another. I deleted this from the story because it got really weird about what plane was where. But there is another plane from a shell company that was disassembled. I can't find out which of the two models it possibly was. But the reason why I mainly deleted it is because I think the debris is from MH370. I just think that they tore the plane apart and threw some of it in the water, or when the plane was landing at Diego Garcia, it was like coming apart and some of it was falling in, the Western Indian Ocean. That's what I think happened. So that's why I got rid of that. But if you believe the debris was fake and that they faked all that debris, or not all that debris, it's only a few pieces, then in that scenario, there is another plane that got decommissioned like way too early. There's actually like two other planes, but it's hard to tell which one got decommissioned at the right time. So good question on that one, though, as well. That was from McLean. Okay. But yeah, those are good. Those are great questions, actually, guys. Okay, guys, I think that's going to be it for tonight. Thank you for joining me on this live stream and on this special edition of the Hard Truths podcast on the MH370 11-year anniversary, reviewing the all evidence that shows that the MH370 videos are undeniably real. I understand the aversion. I understand people don't like me. I understand that people don't want this to be real and it's too far out there, but I'm sorry, it is real. It just is. I'm just a normal guy living my day-to-day, still doing my 9-to-5 in healthcare IT, just bringing you this information because I think it's important that people know the truth. That's it. That's the only reason. Not getting rich and famous off this, not being invited on Joe Rogan, just doing it. Hope you guys enjoy it. Have a great night, guys. We'll talk soon. Peace out. MH370X. Love you guys. Which one? Where? This one.
Planes are meant to fly, planes they ain't supposed to fall from the sky. But if they do, they'll leave behind more than a piece or two. Planes just be flying, I know you think I'm lying. The USA, they be hiding the truth, and I ain't buying. Planes, they're meant to fly, planes, they ain't supposed to fall from the sky. But if they do, they'll leave behind more than a piece or two. They'll leave behind more than I know you think I'm lying. The USA, they be hiding the truth, and I ain't buying. Planes, they're meant to fly, planes, they ain't supposed to fall from the sky. But if they do, they'll leave behind more than a piece or two. Planes just be flying, I know you think I'm lying. The USA, they be hiding the truth, and I ain't buying. They'll leave behind more than a piece or two.